you ever been frustrated at your lack of ability to talk things out with your spouse? Have you ever thought, I can discuss what is going on in my life with everyone except my husband? Have you considered your problem might be the differences between the way men and women communicate? Much of these differences are physical, and we are as God wants us to be. I have read a number of studies on this subject of how men and women communicate differently, and they all have similar findings. Today, I would like to focus on some of the differences that are in Dr. John Lund's book, For All Eternity. He has studied and counseled for years on this subject. I want to focus on the difference in the communication styles of men and women. Communication is a vital part of our relationship. We often think that we are great communicators, and it is our spouse that has a communication problem. Dr. Lund said, communication is an exchange of understanding. It is an eternal truth that all frustration comes from unmet expectations. There is no such thing as someone who is frustrated who did not have an expectation that was unmet. Communication differences are in large part because of the way men and women's brains develop. The corpus callosum in our brain is the connection between the left and right side of the brain. Dr. Lund has studied Dr. Reuben Ger of the University of Pennsylvania's research on the brain. Dr. Ger has spent many years studying the brain, and he reports that basically a pathway in the woods in the male brain as it relates to the transmission of information between the left and right sides of the brain. The female brain is a 4-lane freeway. The female brain is 11% smaller on average than the male brain, but is more efficient in many ways. Men and women are constantly integrating information. On this picture, you can see how a woman's brain goes back and forth with connections, and a male's brain goes more front to back. Even at night, only 10% of the male brain goes to sleep. Female brain goes to sleep. 90% is sending messages back and forth and integrating information. Contrast that with 70% of the male brain that goes to sleep at night. Women internalize information and take it personally, and men normally do not. A man might make a comment such as, Jessica, who's their daughter-in-law, does a really good job of keeping their house clean. His wife will think that he's comparing Jessica to her and think that he is criticizing the way that she keeps house. This is not what he intended at all. He just was making a comment about their daughter-in-law. A woman might say something similar to her husband, such as, Andy, who is a neighbor, keeps their yard immaculate, but she really does want her husband to internalize it, and he will just agree with her, not realizing that she is relating it to him at all. Men compartmentalize information in their brain, as opposed to women whose brain is more integrated. That men have a separate box for information, a box for feelings, and they typically focus on the present. This explains why men can shut the door on something and move on, and a woman might rehash an incident for days. Dr. Lund gives an example of a husband and wife who have an argument. They get past the hurtful words and apologize to each other. To the husband, the situation is over. He shuts the door on what's happened and doesn't think about it again. His wife will go over and over in her mind what happened and be just as hurt several days later as she was when the fight first happened. Men are monothinkers. This means they think about one thing at a time, and they do one thing at a time. They are wonderful at focusing on a problem and solving it. Then they can move on to the next thing. Women, because of all the connections in their brain, can think and talk and listen all at the same time. Women are good at running households and relationships. Women use 3 times as many communicating signals as men do, and they typically need more discussion. Another way that men and women are different that often causes friction is the fact that women are interdependent and men are independent. Men do not want to be told what to do, and they are typically kind of defensive. A woman, on the other hand, loves to get the opinions of others and will weigh all her options before she decides on what action to take. Both men and women could learn from each other's communication styles. Here's a summary. Because our brains are different, it does not mean that we cannot improve our listening skills or learn to forgive and not get hurt over and over. An understanding of how our spouse's brain works can help us have a better understanding without so much frustration. Thank you.